What's up? This is the Snodgrass podcast. I want to welcome you guys to today's podcast episode. I have a good friend of mine on this particular episode named Sep Shoemaker with Shoemaker Properties. He's out of Indiana, owns his own real estate business, owns his own property management company, and he's just an extremely amazing, genuine, and authentic man of God. We definitely dig into that today. When I think about a man with such a childlike faith and an authentic faith and really is a doer of the word and not just hearer, I think of this man, Sep Shoemaker. He has a streak on his Bible app that every single morning he spends at least an hour with the Lord, and he's just started spending like half a day a week with the Lord, like 5 or 6 hours straight. He's been doing this every single day, an hour with the Lord for 1,500 plus days. So when he talks about that in this particular episode, that just he shows up and the Lord speaks to him. The Lord is living through him, and he is a marketplace Christian business leader, and he's just an awesome man of God. So Sep Shoemaker's on a show with me today. I want to talk to you guys just real quick about some things with Iron Deep. And if you go over and check out irondeep.com, that's our website. We got some really cool things just going on. Go check out the retreats page. Number one, we have a retreat called the Men's Awakening coming out March 13th to 2023, March 13th, 2023. This is in Zion National Park. We've rented out 2 Airbnbs. It's on 25 acres, right at the foothills of the mountain of Zion National Park. And we're going to be with other business leaders of faith. So very highly successful business owners of faith. We're going out there, and we have an amazing program set up to give you an opportunity, number one, to encounter the Father in such an authentic way, and to just build that depth of relationship with other like-minded business owner dudes. This is what we do. It's a very undistracted environment, and so make sure you guys apply on irondeep.com for that particular retreat. We have some other retreats coming up as well. We have the Soulmate retreat that if you're interested in going to one with your spouse, with your wife, I would make sure you guys check out the Soulmate. That's coming in November 2023. So make sure you guys check out the retreats page on irondeep.com. We also have videos on there that really relate this message that really talks to men of faith and that have business ownership. And that's really just what we're talking about, guys. What are you guys struggling with? How can we help you? Whether it's in your business, whether it's as a leader of your organizations or in your health or in your families and your relationships, like how can we help you live the most fulfilled life through Christ? Really, that's our mission here at Iron Deep. So make sure you guys check all that out at Iron Deep, or you can check out our YouTube channel. We have videos coming out each week, and we're having more. We got more things to come, so we want to hear from you guys. What do you guys want to hear? We love creating, collaborating, celebrating, men of business ownership and of faith. So check all that out at irondeep.com or check out our YouTube channel at Iron Deep. Now, I want to introduce you guys to the guest of today's podcast, Mr. Sep Shoemaker. What's going on? I'm back with our guest on today's podcast. I got Sep Shoemaker on the podcast with me. What's going on, Sep?
Hey, not much. How you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Super honored to have you on here. I know we get to see each other quite a bit lately.
Yeah, that's been a huge bonus in my life, I got to tell you.
Well, good. I didn't know if it was going to be a bonus or, a setback. So
It's definitely a bonus.
No, man, thank you so much. It's just been an honor to walk with you, and I know we've gotten to know each other the past few years, real estate investing, and both from Indiana. You got a chance to come out to Iron Deep in September, kind of see what that was all about, and I got to know you a lot better through that, and then through the Iron Deep community. We've definitely stayed in contact and be able to walk with each other a little bit through our faith walk, but also our business walk. And it's just an honor to have you on here, man. When I think about people that just have that maturity in their faith, but also have that childlike faith, I think about you, right? And that's what the Bible talks about, having that childlike heart, that faith. That's just kind of like innocent. You're just with the Father. I know we've talked a lot about that, but before we really dig into that and have our audience really hear the heart of Sep Shoemaker, let's just talk about you, man. Like your journey. I know you've had an interesting life, I would say. Interesting journey, right?
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. Yeah, my mom and dad, they divorced when I was very, very young, like a year old. My dad struggled with addiction all of my life and most of his. So I spent a lot of time with my mom, and both sides of the family. Just didn't spend a whole lot of time with my dad. Um, as I grew up in a broken home, my mom got remarried. I had some half brother and two sisters that come along and were great. We were great, sibling uh, relationships, and still today still have some great relationships in that. Um, I didn't find Jesus till I was 21, and growing up, I knew I always wanted to be in some kind of a trades. I wanted to be a carpenter, and my mom used to joke around and say, "Well, Jesus was a carpenter," and at that time it didn't matter. I didn't care. I just knew that's what I was into, and I enjoyed it. So right out of high school, or in high school, I started in a vocational school. Right out of high school, went down to the Vincennes University in Indiana and studied construction down there for just a little bit. Then went off to do carpentry work. Built bridges for a while, built houses for a while. During 2006 through 2009, I built museums and museum displays for a while. So kind of have a pretty good range of carpentry experience and building and construction. Just always been around it. So
Yeah,
that's
that's awesome. So I know you were really you kind of were in the construction industry, and you still are. I mean, especially with real estate, you buy some houses on your own, do some property management, a lot of construction too. But it sounds like that you've been in that industry for pretty much all of your career. Is that correct?
Yeah, it is. In one aspect or another of it, it's always been part of my life. I worked for a chemical plant for a while. I did go on to get a degree in that, and worked for them for a while until I was kind of thrown back into this industry. So it worked out though.
Yeah, I
I
know.
can look back. Go ahead.
I said, no, you go ahead. Like, you can look back. I want to take us back up to in the last few years, you've actually started your own company, Shoemaker Properties, and done some property management and construction. But take us through your journey, just through construction to up to today.
So, so as I look back, I look at all the different jobs I had and different skills that the Lord gave me, and I can see how He was preparing me for now. And at the time when you're walking through it, you never know where you're headed. You just take one day at a time. But looking back, I can see it. I can see how each skill and in each area of building and construction has all led me up to this point. When I was 21 years old, I actually was worked in the forestry industry. I was a logger, and we did tree clearing and timber buying, and I was actually running an excavator one day, and I lived a pretty rough life back then. I hung around with a lot of guys a lot like me, and we were doing a lot of things we shouldn't have,
Mm-hmm.
and heading down that wrong path, very empty path. But I sat in this excavator one day, and the Spirit of the Lord come on me. And I didn't know what it was at first, but what I did know is that the love that I felt in that moment changed my life forever.
Mm.
And I knew I could never be the same, because all of the things that my mom and my grandma had always told me about the Lord and how He was real and how He loved me, at that moment, I found that it was true.
Mm.
And it stopped me in my tracks. And I sat in that cab of that excavator and just cried. And I thought, wow, He's real,
Mm.
because there is no other explanation for what just happened
Yeah.
as I'm sitting here. And and it was life changing, and when I'm kind of an all in person. I'm either all out or I'm all in. And at that moment I was all in, and my life did a 180, and I was ready to tell everybody what I had just experienced, because you can't argue with the experience.
Yeah.
And so I stayed in construction, but I knew that my life had some kind of purpose now. And I even wondered for a while if I should be in full-time ministry.
Mm-hmm.
And it was awesome because I met my wife right after that. And her dad was the one that taught me that you don't have to be in vocational ministry to be in full-time ministry. And, that took a minute, but I finally understood what he meant by that. And so, I just kept growing. I kept growing in my skills as a carpenter. I got married about a year, maybe two after that. And as soon as we got married, we moved to Michigan. That's where my wife was from. And I went back to building houses and doing construction, got better, trying to hone my craft, and enjoyed a lot of finish work and trim work, cabinet work. And then just, and even through that time, went through some seasons with the Lord, got real close to him, not fell away from him, but, kind of slid away a little bit, always followed him. But, as I look back now, if my relationship with him was like it is now 10 years ago, wow, where would I be now? So I think about that often. But, so in the recession, when 08, 09 hit, I was building museum displays for a place that built museums, and we built all of the displays and stuff. And they ended up closing down. They tried to stay in business, but the recession was too bad. So I went back to school, got a degree in chemical processing, went on to work for a chemical company. And in 2014, I got a call that my dad had passed away. And I knew my dad. We had relationship. It wasn't a great relationship, but it was a relationship. And he had a lot of real estate over in Dayton, Ohio, and a lot of industrial real estate. And I knew he had that. He wasn't married at the time. The plan was for me to always take it over someday. We kind of half jokingly would say, but he never told anybody about how he ran that or how it went or what he did. It was just kind of his own thing. So I knew immediately what that meant when I heard that he had passed away. He had passed away of an overdose, actually. He got he had went to prison because he got caught with drugs, stayed a year in prison, and then two days after he got out, ended up passing away. Wow. So my aunt, his sister, actually ran the business while he was away, and it was pretty rough. It was just barely hanging on, his real estate business. So I knew I'd be having to take that over, and I did. And the Lord's hand just was on that whole process. And we ran that, my wife and I ran that business from Michigan for 2 years. And after my dad passed away, then my uncle actually did all of my maintenance and took care of it while I was home. I'd come down every week, spend a few days down in Dayton, and then drive back to Michigan. And a year later, after my dad died, my uncle died. And I told my wife, I said, we're going to have to move. And she knew it. She knew it was inevitable. So as we got everything packed up, it took us about a year, just about, in order to pack everything, put a house on the market, find a house down here. And then at that time we had two boys. And we still have two boys, but at that time they were pretty young and they had never lived anyplace else than where they were. And we knew we were going to have to uproot them and move them down. And we all just kind of prayed about it together as a family. and asked the Lord to open some doors, to sell the house we were in, to help us find something that would work in the school district that we were looking for over in Richmond. And and he did every bit of that. And it was almost like he just was kind of sitting back saying, I'll just let you take your time, and when you're ready to do this, then I'll make it happen. Because as soon as we all started praying, it just happened, one right after another. Uh, we got, the most we could out of our home in Michigan. We found some acreage in a farm down in Indiana and bought that, and it was really good.
Yeah.
Got moved down here.
That's awesome. So you moved to Richmond, Indiana now, right? And you manage this out of Dayton.
Yep.
And then you end up, what ended up happening with that?
So about a year after we moved down, I ended up selling all of it. I found a buyer who wanted it all. And so I have this big sale, and we have this contract wrote up, and everything is going good. And I thought, all right, so now what?
Yeah.
I don't have a job. I don't know what to do. I've got this farm. So I kind of piddled around on it for a while, and tried to be a farmer. I'm not really a good one. So it actually ended up sending me into a depression, just because I didn't have purpose. I was at a point in my life I didn't know what to do. So in the middle of that, or right at the end of it, I guess, I had a very good friend of mine who owned a forestry business that he and I used to work both together at that company, and he started his own business, and he had it for about 15 years and was ready to sell it, and sold it off to another guy, and asked me if I would come on board to do sales and estimating for him. And I said, you know what? I'm not doing anything else. This has got to be better than driving myself crazy. So I drove all over Indiana and a little bit of Ohio, looking at jobs, and just quoting things. And my younger brother, there's 10 years between he and I, and he kept telling me about this book called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And I was driving around, and I started listening to books on Audible, and I came across that book one day, and I thought, oh yeah, that's that one book that he had told me about. So I played it, and I went through the whole book, probably 2 days. And then I went through it again, and I couldn't believe what I was reading in these new ways of thinking that I had never been taught or anything. And I just started absorbing that, and I knew right away that I needed to get into real estate. I knew right away. And it wasn't even just the whole real estate thing. It was, I needed to shift my life and my whole focus on things. And so I started grabbing every book that I could find on real estate and listening to them. And so then one day I'm driving, and I remember I was down around southern Indiana, down around the Ohio River, and I got thinking about a podcast. And I hadn't listened to a lot of podcasts, but I started searching. I thought, surely there's real estate podcasts on here. So I started searching, and I found this one called Simple Wholesaling with Brett Snodgrass.
Yep.
And I listened to the most recent one, whatever that one was. And I thought, okay, I can listen to this. This guy, he proclaims what he believes in Jesus. I believe him to be honest right away. I mean, it was just awesome. So I went back to the very first one, and this was before you had even hit episode 100.
Yeah.
So I probably had 40 of them to catch up on, maybe 50. And I just started going back. I'd listen to 2 or 3 of them a day, just listening to conversations. And I had a notepad beside on my armrest in my truck, and I'd just be driving down the road taking notes as these people you were interviewing, and man, I just absorbed it like a sponge. And it was great because my boys who were then probably 6th and 7th grade. When they had breaks in school, they would ride with me some days, and they would just, we'd take off, and we may put 300-400 miles on the truck in that day just looking at jobs. Well, we'd be listening to Brett Snodgrass and Simple Wholesaling on the podcast
That's
all day.
awesome.
So they knew exactly who you were.
Yeah.
And it was a great year. I spent a year doing that, and it was a great year of education.
Yeah.
It was worth more than any degree that I could have went and got, for sure.
Yeah. Well, that's so crazy that you would spend all these years, gone to school, gotten a good education, but then you read one book, you listened to a few podcasts, and it totally changed your mindset. And I think that a lot of people get into that rut, get into that trap. And I think a lot of this really is about mindset. Even when you're in the real estate business, in order to scale it or to level up or to keep growing, you constantly have to shift and change your mindset, because the real estate market's obviously always changing. And right now we're in this transition, we're in this season. And so for me, I'm like, okay, maybe we've been doing this for a while. And a lot of times people will just keep doing what they've been doing, and then it stops working, but they just keep doing it. But for me, I'm like, okay, maybe we have to switch some things up. We have to start changing our mindset. Obviously, this changed your life and your sons, right? I think they're 15, 16 now.
Yeah, they sure are.
And just think about like what they've listened to, and now maybe their mind is opened, and when they're 23, 25 years old, they'll have some of this knowledge. I mean, that's where it all started for me, just listening to books on tape and CDs about guys. They're just ordinary people building these businesses. And I think I started when I was 23, 24 years old, really opened my mind up. So if you're hearing this, I guess just make sure you guys are educating yourself, keep growing. I think that where I have stalled out in life is where maybe I reached a point where I just stopped growing. I stopped reading. I thought, I already know all this stuff, and just stopped consistently growing. So thanks for that. I want to just ask about your business now. I mean, so you've been in real estate now for several years, own a property management company. You manage some rental properties around your area in Indiana. You've bought some rental properties yourself and done some flips, things like that. So talk to us about just, as a Christian man in your business, talk to us about how things have been going, and just what is that like in this season of business ownership as a follower of Christ?
Yeah, I sure will. So it all started back in about 2019. I had I'll say a vision from the Lord, as I was getting, really in depth in this real estate thing and trying to figure out what I'm supposed to do next. I had this idea come to me, and it was to have 1,000 properties to make several $1 million a year. But the biggest and most important thing was to be able to give away a profit of $1 million a year to 3 different ministries. And I knew right away who the first 2 ministries were. One was an organization that feeds starving children in the Philippines, kids that live in the city dumps. They feed about 3,000 kids right now a month. And I just met with them last evening, actually, and they're looking to really expand this next year. But we've been with them from the beginning, since they started their ministry. And one of the guy that runs it, he is actually from the Philippines, grew up in those same city dumps, living in a cardboard hut. And, his story is awesome. And it just grabbed my heart as soon as I met him. And we've been on board ever since. And then another one is Project AK-47, where they get children out of human trafficking and out of child soldiers, and get them to let them live a normal child life. Human trafficking's got to be one of the worst evils on the planet, and it just really, that organization really does a great job at that all over the world. I wasn't sure what the third ministry was at first, and then the Lord made it real clear to me that it's my local church, the church we go to here in Richmond. We have 2 campuses, one on the north side and then one kind of just south of downtown. And, Richmond is full of drugs and abuse and generational poverty and a lot of things that just keep it held down underneath the thumb of the enemy, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know how we're ever going to defeat it, but I know that I'm going to give it a fight until I can't anymore. So that we knew. So once I knew that, I knew those were the three ministries. This is the goal. This is the the vision. Then I dived right in because that's me, all or nothing. So the first year, I think we bought 30 some rentals, my wife and I, and she just kind of looked at me like, "Okay, go for it." I'm going to trust you. That's
Let's
right.
Go all in.
I think her famous phrase is just, "I trust you. I trust you."
That's
So
cool. That's good.
we didn't ever intend on managing other people's properties. But that first year we were cruising along, and I had built some relationships with some realtors in town. And one of them sent an investor that had called them from California to me one day. I got a phone call, and he says, "Hey, I'm part of an investment group out here in California, and we buy all over the country, but I've always wanted to be in Richmond and get some properties there, but could never find anybody to manage them or take care of them." He said, "Would you be interested?" And I said, "Hey, I don't know. It's not something I've ever thought about doing, or those aren't really the books I really read. It was about property managing for other people." Uh, So I told him, I said, "Well, let me think about it for a few days, and I'll get back with you." And I prayed about it, and my wife prayed about it with me, and we thought, let's give it a shot. Why not? So we did, and that's been, I think, when we tag teamed up with that group of guys, that's been a couple years now, and we're over 200 and I think close to 250 units in 2 years with them.
Wow.
So they we said yes, I think they were just waiting for that yes.
Yeah.
And they really have come.
Wow,
here.
that's quite the growth. That's quite the growth. I know we've talked about you guys have grown so much. What does that look like? And sometimes growth is it's just hard, right? When you're growing so fast, you're trying to keep up with it, keep up with the moving train. And I know we've had that conversation, and kind of being that business owner, that can be heavy and challenging. And one thing I just want to get back to is, I know we were talking the other day, and we're part of a group, a community with Iron Deep, and we were talking, a lot of times we talk about business or health or just challenges and issues that we're struggling with in life. And you started really opening up about your time with the Lord and kind of like how you do that, and each and every morning that you spend an hour with the Lord, and even one day per week you spend several hours with the Lord. And you're talking about just sometimes that 5 or 6 hours goes so fast, and a lot of the guys really just kind of leaning in, soaking that in. And one thing I just admire is just your consistency, because I know as a business owner, we can just get sometimes shaken up. We got so many things going on. We're so busy. Sometimes it can just be overwhelming. And one of the first things sometimes to go is our quiet time maybe goes from 30 minutes to 15 minutes to 10 to 5, and sometimes nothing at all. And you've just kind of had that consistency over time. So can you talk to our audience just about that? You even have an app on your phone. I think you've been in the Bible app for 1,500 plus days in a row. Even at Iron Deep, one of the things that I asked everyone to do is to put away their phones. And you said, "Hey, I would love to put away my phone, but I got a streak of 1,400 days in my Bible app." And I just thought that was hilarious. I'm like, you can definitely read your Bible while you're here, but talk to us about like your just consistency with the Lord, and day in and day out. It is an unshakable consistency that you have.
Yeah. So when I started all this, before I even got really traction in these businesses, I read the book Miracle Morning for Millionaires, and I had never heard of any kind of a concept like that, of waking up at 5 a.m. and really focusing, the first hour of your day or 2 hours on something that specific, as spending time. And they don't necessarily call it prayer, but it's spending time. I think they talk about meditation and exercise and all that. And as I was getting through that book, the Lord just kept tapping on my shoulder saying, "Hey, this is what I want you to do." And it was one of those things where I couldn't get it out of my mind. It was, no matter what was going on through the day, often I can get busy and forget things, and I just could not forget about that one. And I told my wife as I finished it, I said, "All right, tomorrow morning I'm gonna wake up at 5." And she kind of looked at me. She said, "Why?" And I said, "Well, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna try this, and I'm gonna see what happens." And and I felt like I was a pretty good Christian before that.
Yeah.
I loved him. We had I taught small groups and I lead worship at our church, and I felt like I was pretty in touch with what the Lord had. And so that next morning, I woke up at 5, and I get out of bed and I drag myself down to the couch, and I grab my phone and I use the YouVersion Bible app on my phone, and then I use my notes in my phone as well. And I just started sitting down, and I started reading and did a devotion, and then spent a little bit of time in prayer. And I was like, okay, I like that, and I even had a little worship time where, I just had a song going and just worshiped. And it was like, all right. So then I woke up the second day, and then the third day. Well, after about a week of that, I thought, I think I'll do this for about a month and see how this goes. And maybe I can even just print these prayers off, because I'm typing out my prayer and everything that I'm doing, just for myself. And I thought maybe I'll print them off and give them to my boys and let them have them for someday. And then as the months went by, because I never stopped, and then the years went by, and then I still think someday maybe I'll go back and print all of these off, these prayers and these times of just journaling, so that they can see, when all this is over, when my life is done, they can see the struggle. They can see the good times, and they can see the bad times, and they can see the prayers of, "God, how are you going to get me out of this?" And they can see the prayers of, "God, thank you, because I don't deserve this." And I want them to be able to do that. But even more than that, I want to just continue. I hit day 1,000. When I hit the 1,000th day, I was like, man, this is awesome. But I thought, that's a huge milestone. Do I stop? And I'll never forget, the Lord told me that morning, and it was as clear as you and me sitting here talking. He says, "I'm not looking for just 1,000 days. I'm looking for a lifetime." And I was like, all right, you've got it. Wow. I surrender. Wow. And I will give it to you. So that time with him every morning, and sometimes it's not 5 o'clock. Sometimes I don't get up till 7, but it is the very first hour at least of my day. And I give it to him as a sacrifice. It's like, I'm not going to do anything else, Lord, until I meet with you. And then once I meet with him, okay. And a lot of times, as soon as I'm done, I'm kicked in the face with life. Right. And I just get up and keep going. And he gives me that strength. Yeah. Well, about a year ago, I ran into a devotional in the YouVersion app by a guy named David Hodgson. And he's a business owner, entrepreneur. He's from Australia. His business is worth like, I don't know, one or 2 point something billion dollars. But he talked about in this devotion how he spends a full day every week with the Lord. And he goes out and he kind of takes you on this tour of what he does. And he takes his jet ski down to the local reservoir, drives like 5 miles up river. And he's got this little island that he's cleared out over the years. And he sets camp up and he stays there all day. And he says, how am I supposed to run a business when I don't spend time with the owner? And he said, I've got to spend time with him. And then he encourages everybody. He's got a whole ministry about all this. But it's all about spending time with the Lord. And when I ran into that, I thought, wow, that's incredible. I mean, who's got time to do that?
Yeah.
To spend a whole day. And he said, sometimes I'll spend a day and a half and I'll just sleep out there.
Mm.
Like he's ex special forces.
Yeah.
So spending the night out in the Australian outback is not anything for him. But, so I really started pondering that. And I started asking the Lord, okay, because it just kept coming up in my mind and in my prayer time. And it was like, man, could I really, and we're just so busy. We have a contracting company, a management company, and an investment company, and we're running red line all the time,
Yeah.
just 100 mile an hour. And I thought, there's no way I can take that much time. And so I told the Lord, I said, all right, I'll make you a deal. That always works. So I said, I'll make you a deal. How about I'll do from like 6 a.m. to noon every Wednesday?
Mm-hmm.
How does that sound? And he said, let's start there.
Mm.
And I said, all right. So since August of this year, of 2022, every Wednesday, I think I've missed like one or two because of a surgery that we had and just some other stuff. But every Wednesday, that's my day. Everybody in the company knows, don't call me, don't text me. I'll get to you after lunch. And I spend with him. And I, there's been times I've driven down to our local reservoir that's about a half an hour away. And I found a nice little beach to go and sit by or pull up to. And I do kind of the same thing as what I do on my mornings, but I just kind of expand it out. And when I started that, it was all on my phone and doing stuff. And then I got a new laptop, and I was like, yeah, that'd be nice. I can really get some typing in on that. So I use that now.
Yeah.
And but when we went to Iron Deep in September, the Lord really opened my eyes to some things, and what I realized while I was there, I mean, it was an awesome event, and to spend that much time with him, you can't walk away from that not changed, even if it's just a little bit. But as close as I've already felt to him, I felt even closer after my time there. But one of the things he told me is, he said, you spend a lot of time praying for your issues and yourself and your businesses and all the things that you're involved in. He said, I want you to spend some time praying for other people.
Yeah.
And that really kind of hit me right in the eye.
Wow.
And I was like, yeah, you're right. And as I'm looking back through my journals, and it's help, Lord, help, Lord, help, Lord, and thank you, Lord. Thank you for coming through again. And so, while we were at Iron Deep, I started praying that next morning. I got up and did my devotions. I had a beautiful view out my window over a lake and just looking at the mountains. And I started praying for all these guys that were in my small group there. And then some guys even that I meet with and have been meeting with for years. On Friday mornings, we do an accountability thing, and start praying for them. And I thought, wow, that was good.
Yeah.
Yeah. And how I always can tell when the Lord is happy about things is, he'll just kind of tell me, when I started praying for other people, I could tell he's pleased with that.
Yeah.
And so every day since then, I have prayed for those guys, and then even more of the guys that I've met through Iron Deep, they get put on that prayer list. And man, I think today I was praying for about 20 some guys.
Wow.
And in my morning, today was Wednesday, so I had my morning this morning with him. And, by the time I get done with that, you burn up 2 or 3 hours just praying for people.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
I think that's so good. I know yesterday we were studying just the book of James in our small group, and it was talking about just doers of the word, not just hearers. And I think we fall into that trap of, just kind of praying for ourselves, praying for our businesses, praying for our family. And then outside of our home, sometimes we don't intentionally pray. And for you to really be intentional and to print out the lists of all the prayers and to really pray for the individuals, because I know I've gotten text from you, and it's just really encouraging to hear someone is actually praying for you, not just saying, oh, I will pray for you, but saying, oh, I did pray for you, and here's maybe something that I heard or something that the Lord told me and showed me. So that's just awesome. And just want to you inspire me just with your consistency and walk with the Lord. And I think even before Iron Deep, we were having that conversation, and I know Iron Deep was, something, it's for business owners, and maybe, it's portrayed as someone reaching a certain level. And your business, you've been in for a few years, but you're like, I don't know, maybe if I'm to the level of some of these other guys, and maybe what do I have to give or, to offer. And the thing I told you was like, man, your maturity in your faith and your soul, like these are what these guys are craving. And I think you've really shown that. And obviously that's why one of the big reasons, not just as a business owner on this podcast, but just your heart and the maturity in your heart. So thanks, Sep, for doing that, man. Any last words, just of wisdom? I mean, we get hundreds, if not thousands of business owners listening to this particular episode. But what's your last words of wisdom as a follower of Christ, a business owner? You're really, really busy. You have a family, 2 boys, married for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
Like, tell that person, because that's who's listening to this, family, business owner, they're trying to juggle and balance everything out. What do you say to them?
Well, I say, here's the challenge. If you want your life to change, spend time with him, show up and spend time with Jesus. Because, as well as I thought that I could do everything on my own, it all exploded when I started spending that time with Jesus. And the more time I spend with him, the more he just shows up, and it's funny. You and I were talking the other day about this prayer time. I was with the other guys, and this idea popped up in my head of writing a book. And I've never thought about writing a book in my life. And it's funny because the next morning when I was talking to Jesus, the idea popped up again, and all that just kept popping up in my mind was the title "Show Up," living a life closer to God. And I thought, okay, well, that might be a 2023 thing here. Yeah. I may have to get started on that, but I don't know. I don't know if I've got that much wisdom to share with anybody, but I can tell you from my experiences. I don't have a degree in economics. I'm not a huge, educator of any kind in any of this area. But what I do know is I put the work into it, and I've asked the Lord to bless it. And man, we have grown over 100% every year since we've been started.
Yeah.
So
that's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Thank you. And it's all him.
I like the title. I think you even said that because some of the other guys were asking, questions about like, how do you spend so much time with the Lord, and does your mind drift, and the consistency of it all. And I think that was your advice: just show up. You just said sometimes it's amazing, and he speaks to me and taps me on the shoulder, and sometimes it doesn't happen. And but every day I'm there, and I show up every single day. So that's awesome, Sep. Well, thank you so much for being on the podcast today, brother. Appreciate you.
Hey,
love you,
thanks.
Man.
Yeah, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
All right.
It's great.
And this is a wrap. Thank you, guys. And this is a wrap with Sep Shoemaker. Make sure you guys go check out irondeep.com. And we'll see you soon, Sep.